So the first thing is like this: you're not allowed to cheat people in business. Now, the halacha, the raw halacha is, and you come across this with the Gemara, is if you overcharge somebody by a sixth, but that's in a market, that's in a where there is a steady market price. So, for example, if tables on the market range between, let's say, $190 and $210 for table, that's a market price. And some guy doesn't tell you and you don't know, and he charges you $270, he's cheated you by more than a sixth of what the table is worth, then it's bittul mekach, then the whole sale goes back. That's the halacha. The problem we have today is that it's very hard, we don't really have a steady market price. Because you have, some people sell tables for this price, some tables sell this price, and Amazon undercuts everybody, right? That's the, what do you call it? In halacha, if you sell something cheap, so the Mishnah Bab Metzia says Tavo of Bracha. The United States, if you sell too cheap, so you could be accused, especially if you're a big company, like what's his name lost the lawsuit. Walmart lost a lawsuit. Walmart lost a lawsuit. Walmart lost a lawsuit. Well, Walmart lost a lawsuit because Walmart's policy was to go into small towns and undercut everybody, and then drive them out of business, and raise the prices for Shtetzach. So they were taken to court for what the United States is called predatory practice. And they lost the lawsuit because there are rules in the United States. Just because you're the big kid on the block doesn't mean you can push everybody around. And I think what's his name is in court all the time because he's dominating the market. Amazon. I mean, what's it my fault that I got a successful business? Well, democracy says it is your fault, and you're going to have to figure out a way that you can't have a monopoly over everything. Let somebody else go bring packages to people. That sort of thing. Okay, so in the Torah, dafka to undercut is a good thing if you sell cheap. On the other hand, if you cheat somebody, or if you're on the other end, if you buy it too cheap, the guy selling it didn't realize what the price is. He had no idea what the price is, and you bought it more than a sixth. But that's only where there's a steady market. Now, there's a Gemara in Makos that mentions, Rashi brings it down. The Gemara just mentions, when it talks about honesty, it mentions Rav Safra. The Gemara in Makos, on around Daf Chaf Gimel, the Gemara says Rav Safra was in the middle of saying Kriya Shema, and somebody came and offered him to buy something from him, and Rav Safra did not respond because he was in the middle of saying Kriya Shema. And so Rav Safra did not respond. Thank you, Ron. Rav Safra did not respond. And so the guy raised, when he finished Kriya Shema, the guy raised the price because he thought Rav Safra didn't respond because he didn't want the cheaper price. And Rav Safra said, no, I'll take the cheaper price. The reason I didn't respond was because I was in the middle of Kriya Shema, but I had made up my mind that I would sell it to you for the cheaper price. You don't have to do that. You never committed yourself. But in honesty, in business, it's like if you want an example in Israel, if I get into a cab and I know more or less what the price of the cab is, the guy says to me, if I want to go from here to Hardorf, let's say, and I know that the price, let's say it's 65 shekels. The guy says to me, how much? And the guy says to me, okay, do you want the meter, or do you want the meter, or do you want the price? So I say to the guy, how much? The guy says 50 shekels. I told the guy, listen, it's too late. That's not enough. That's not enough. Why should this guy lose just because he's not aware? I know what the price is. I know what besides the fact that you can make a Kiddush Hashem that way. But I know what the price. Why should this guy lose? Because he doesn't know that sometimes the guy's a new driver. So if a guy wants to make a Kiddush Hashem, tell the guy, I'll give you an extra 5 shekels, an extra 10 shekels. By the way, this also applies if you ever set a price. What I learned with cab drivers, by the way, when I get into a cab in Israel, because the guy doesn't want to turn on the meter. He wants to avoid putting on the meter. When I get, the guy says, how much? I said to him, so I know more or less I'll say to the guy 60 shekels or the meter. You decide. You know which is worth it to you, 60 shekels or the meter. Now sometimes the guy, you'll set a price and it's 60 shekels. And then you hit a big traffic jam. Right? So sometimes you feel, I won this one. Right? You should add. You know that wasn't what you had in mind, and it's not this guy's fault. You could sit in traffic for a long time. So add 5, 10 shekels to the guy. By the driver, you should know the mentality of the driver, it's not even the money, as much as the guy just feels he got took. Right? So make his day. Throw in another 5 shekels. Throw in another 10 shekels. I'll tell you what you can't do. You can't get into a cab. This Rav Aaron Feldman told us this years ago. If you get into a cab, and only when you get to the place, you start haggling on prices, And the guy says, I want 70 shekels. You say, no, it's 60 shekels. And you give him 60 shekels and you get out of the cab. It could be you're stealing. It could be you're stealing. Because if he drives away and he's unhappy, then it could be a steal. We're talking about Gehenna for 10 shekels, right? Which you'd pay a lot more to get out of it, right? And for 10 shekels, you could actually be stealing from the guy. And therefore, you have to be very careful. There was a case here in the yeshiva in Israel where a guy comes to the Rosh Yeshiva and he says, I want to donate $4 million to your yeshiva. Right? That's some serious, I could get used to that. So I want to donate $4 million to yeshiva, but only one thing. For the $4 million, I think I would like you to promise me a portion in Gan Eden. So the Rosh Yeshiva says, look, I could promise you that you're doing a big mitzvah, but I can't promise you a chelik in Gan Eden because I don't know what else you do. So he says, no, listen, I think for $4 million you could promise me a portion in Gan Eden. He says, I told you, I can promise you that it's a mitzvah. He says, listen, we know what $4 million could do for your yeshiva. For $4 million, I want a part. He says, I'm sorry, for all the money in the world, I won't promise you something that I can't promise. I can promise you it's a mitzvah. I don't know about your portion in Gan Eden. So the guy says, okay, I just want to tell you, a very wealthy man died, and he left at his will $4 million for your yeshiva. His children have challenged the will, and they said the reason he left $4 million to your yeshiva is because you promised him a portion in Gan Eden. I am an agent of the court. I was sent here to test you. If you would have promised me a portion in Gan Eden, your yeshiva would not get the money. I will now testify that under no circumstances would you make that promise, and therefore the court will accept that evidence, and the yeshiva got $4 million. Right? That's one of the happy stories. Most of the time when you're honest, you lose. But here, the bottom line is, and here they won. Most of the time you do lose. Here they actually won because of the guy's honesty. Now, if somebody comes to you and says, "I'll give you $4 million," just promising it, and that's also dishonesty in business. That's all. I have never had a problem with students, especially the other yeshiva where a guy's in trouble. And a guy lies to me. So a lot of people say, I can't tolerate when they lie to me. I don't mind when they lie to me. Because if I was them, I'd lie also. If you tell the truth, you're really cooked. You know, hey, have you been pushing drugs in the yeshiva? No, not me. What are you going to say? Yes, then you're for sure in trouble. I have no problem. Listen, you're in trouble for lying also. But I understand where a guy's lying from, where you want to save yourself. You're not allowed to lie. I mean, try to check your tirchak. But at the end of the day, that's what's included over here. Okay, that's as far as what do you call it? By the way, I once walked into a shop here in Israel. I'll tell you, really impressed. I walked into a shop. I think I had to buy a toaster or something. So the worker is in the shop, somewhere here in Mea Sharm. The worker is in the shop, and I said to the guy, how much is this toaster? He says, for you, it's 200 shekels. Just then, the owner came out, a firm guy with a long beard, older Yerushalmi Jew, and he said, don't say for you it's 200 shekels. For everyone, it's 200 shekels. I was very impressed. Because when you say for you it's 200 shekels, oh. You know, what do you mean for me it's 200? Why, will you like me so much? Right? And the guy came out, he said, don't say for you it's 200. For everyone it's 200 shekels. Don't perpetrate a deception over here. Now, it could be that the two of them have this shtick worked out, where he does it, he corrects him, and then everybody's impressed by how honest the owner is, and it really, and they're really ripping you, right? That would be a great, but they weren't. The guy, he was really upset with him. So that's why because and that works on people. When you can con people, I'm a salesman's delight. You know, you go into, I remember going into this shoe shop in America, and they have this clothing sale. You ever notice the clothing sale, he puts something on, and then you put on the suit, the guy kind of steps back, he cocks his head, and then he talks in a whisper. I like it. And that whisper means I am so overwhelmed with emotion at how good you look, I can't even get the words out. Right? That's what it means. And if he calls me buddy, and hey buddy, how can I help you, buddy? He got me. He called me buddy, and I'm his. Right? I belong to him. Right? I'm a salesman's dream. He's working on a commission, obviously. So anything that you do which isn't straight, absolutely straight, is what do you call it? You're cheating somebody, and then a person's accountable. And the rule of life, just be straight. And by the way, there are very famous Jewish, Rabbi Reichman, who was Nifter Moshe Reichman, was one of the wealthiest Jews in the world. At the time, he was probably the wealthiest. He was in Toronto. He was one of the wealthiest Jews. People knew that with Reichman, that if he gave you a word, it was a word. And you never lose that way. You never lose. Why did he lose his money? Because Margaret Thatcher gave him her word and she broke it. That's why he lost. Because Margaret Thatcher had said that they're going to build, there was a Canary Wharf project, and they were going to build Canary Wharf is off the main, downtown London. And to get to access Canary Wharf, they were supposed to build transportation. So he went into a project over there, a whole mall and a whole, based on her word, that they were going to build access, transportation access to it. And then in the end, she went back on it. They never did it. That's where he took a big hit over there. His company took a big hit. Okay, recovered some of it, but at the end of the day, that's the first thing the Torah says. Now, the second thing here is, can we make it just a little bit colder, by the way? The second thing is, the Torah then goes to Pasuk Yud Zayin. And here, the Chafetz Chaim says, take a look at Pasuk Tes Zayin. Oh no, the Chafetz Chaim is later. Okay, Pasuk Yud Zayin. V'lo sonu ishes abiso v'yaresa me'alokecha. Don't torment each other, and you should fear your God. Ki ani Hashem Elokechem. Now look at Rashi on Pasuk Yud Zayin. Very, very important here. Rashi says, because it's using the same terminology, v'lo sonu ishes abiso is very much like Pasuk Yud Daled, where it says v'chitzing v'otiv lo al tonu ishes amiso esochiv. So what's the difference between Pasuk Yud Daled, where it says Al Tonu, and what's the difference between Pasuk Yud Daled, where it says V'lo Sonu? And this is basic Chumash 101. Rashi says, left column, 6 lines, 7 lines to the bottom. V'lo Sonu Ishas Amiso, Kan, he's here Al Onoas Dvorim. Over here, it's talking about tormenting people verbally. In other words, it's got the same exact terminology, gentlemen. Look at Pasuk Yud Daled, look at Pasuk Yud Zayin. Pasuk Yud Zayin says Al Tonu Ishas Achiv. And here it says velo. Okay, the al and the velo switch, but the same terminology for cheating. Velo sonu ishas amiso. So why are you repeating it? The answer is we're talking about two different things. The Gemara says Pasuk Yud Daled is talking about cheating people financially, and Pasuk Yud Zayin is talking about tormenting people verbally. And says Rashi over here, what does that mean? Kan hiser al hodaz dvarim. 6 7 lines to the bottom. Shelo yakdit ishas chavero. You should not torment each other. V'lo yasienu eitza she'eino hogenes lo. You should not give somebody advice which is not suitable. Lefi darko v'anoso shel yoetz. Don't give him advice because it benefits you. Sometimes you want to give somebody, a guy says to you, listen, I saw a piece of real estate in Yerushalayim. I saw a 4-room apartment in Yerushalayim. They're selling it, instead of 1,400,000 or 1,800,000 shekels, they're selling it for 200,000 shekels. Do you think I should buy it? No, bad idea. Bad idea. That I wouldn't buy. I wouldn't advise it. And then the next day I'm there. Right? That's what's called onos. That's a form of onos dvar. You're advising somebody. I know a girl. She's 24 years old. Her father is 91. He's a billionaire. She's a single daughter of a 91-year-old billionaire who's on a respirator. And somebody suggested her, and she's also gorgeous. And she's also Jewish. Somebody suggested her for a shidduch. Do you think I should look into it? Nah, I don't like what it sounds like. Oh, right? Get out of the way, buddy. I got a son. Right? So, yes, that is called giving bad advice. That's called onoas dvorim. If she's 91, she got a father who's a billionaire. I don't care how old she is. Right? Her father's a billionaire on a respirator. She's a single daughter. You marry her. Then he asks questions later. Right? Says the Gemara, says Rashi, V'im tomar, mi yodea im niskavanti l'ra'ah. Who knows if my intent was negative? A guy asked me for advice. I gave advice. Who knows if I really was intending to mislead the guy? L'kach nemar, therefore the Torah says, the Pasuk says, V'yaresa me'elokecha, you should fear your God. Hayodea machshavos, hu yodea. The one who knows the thoughts, he knows what your intention was. So don't say, well, I meant to give him good advice. Why are you blaming me? Kol davar ha-mosr l'leiv, anything that is given over to the heart. She'ein makir elamisha ha-machshava b'libo. Nobody knows what your thoughts are. Nemar bo v'yaresa l'kecha. Wherever the Torah says something where it could go either way, and it really is dependent on your mind, on your thoughts. And nobody from the outside, no human being could know. No human being could know what you're thinking. There the Torah says, you got to fear your God. Okay, now, when it comes to, let me ask you a question. True story, true case. A guy comes to a bacher, he has pain in his chest, in his lungs. And he goes to a doctor. Now, this is a bacher who's struggling with his Yiddishkeit. He's starting to do averas. For a bacher, he's starting to do averas. And he's got some pain in his lung area. And he goes to a doctor. And the doctor listens to the lungs. And he says to the bacher, he knows that it's like a bronchitis or a pneumonia type of thing. And he says to the bacher, I don't like it. I don't like it. This sounds like it could be pretty serious. And this sounds like, I think you're going to have to get some chest x-rays to check that it isn't a malignancy. And he scares the daylights out of the bacher, knowing that it isn't. And as a result of that, the bacher all of a sudden starts getting his act together. He's davening, putting on tefillin, and straightening himself out. Is the doctor allowed to do such a thing or not? For the good of to take one for the team, or for the good of the team. Why not? Look at he's saving him from Gehenna.
You don't know he's going to do tshuva.
Assuming, but you see that he did tshuva. You see that you knew. Let's put it. We'll make the question back. Knowing that by doing that, it'll scare him onto the right path.
But it's mitzvah baba avera.
Why?
Because you're deceiving him. You're not supposed to deceive him.
You're deceiving him. And if you saw a guy, what do you call it? There's a famous case with the tefillin, where a guy broke into a shul, and he stole a pair of tefillin. It has the name inside, and he goes into a Jewish bookstore. And he says to the guy, the owner of the Judaica shop, and he says, I found these. Would you like to buy them back? Right? Would you like to buy this from me? He found a pair of tefillin. So the Judaica owner, he says, well, let me see if they work first. Right? So he pulls them out, he wraps one around his left hand, puts the one on his head. He looks at the back, he says, hey, where's the one for the other arm? He says, I don't know, man. He says, where's the one for the other arm? You only got for one arm. This isn't a full set. I'll give you $10 for it. I don't want more than that. Oh, okay. They pays him the $10, and he looks at it and says, hey, Moshe, I got your tefillin here. You bring, for the thing. Is he allowed to do it or not?
Yeah. It's
huh?
the same rule with lashon hara.
Is he
go talk to a rabbi?
Okay, so are you allowed to scare the boy to get him to do tshuva? Is that a mitzvah be'avera?
Yeah.
You say
it's
yes.
not a mitzvah.
You say you're allowed to do it. You say you're not allowed to do it. Why not, Jared? Says Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein. They asked him this shaila. Said it's also to do it. You're not allowed to resort to that. It's a form of onoas dvar. It's a form of causing a person needless worry. But he has a raya from the Torah. He has a raya from Nach. What was the raya? What's his proof? It says by Chana and Pnina. Chana was married to Elkanah, and she didn't have any children. And then finally she had a son, Shmuel Hanavi. And the Nach says that she says in her tefillah, she says in the tefillah Chana, she says a praise afterwards. And in this praise, she talks about her sister Pnina, whose children all started dying. And that says Pnina was tormenting Chana. Elkanah had two wives, Chana and Pnina. Pnina had what do you call it? Had children, and Chana did not have children. And it says that Pnina was tormenting Chana. She would purposely send her son over to the refrigerator to get her. Can you bring me something to eat? Make sure Chana heard about it and talk about her children and torment her. And Chazal say, why was Pnina doing it? She was doing it for one purpose: to try to get Chana to daven. Yet as a result, she got punished. So for a good cause, you're not allowed to torment somebody for a good cause. Even for a good cause, you can't torment. And he paskins that doctor wasn't allowed to do it. Yeah.
Didn't we learn before that in order to make peace, you're allowed to lie?
You're allowed to lie to make peace, but you're not allowed to do that. Not if it causes torment. Not if it causes. Here we're talking about where you're hurting somebody's feelings. By the way, take a look at this pasuk where it says "Velo sonu ish es amiso." Right? Look at where does it say it? Starting with, oh no, I don't see it. Oh yeah, look at the last letters of the first four words. Aleph, Vav, Shin, Tuf. Velosonu ish es. Those four letters, Velosonu ish es. Look at the last letters of the first four words. Aleph, Vav, Shin, Tuf. If you rearrange the letters, you know what you get? Ishto, his wife. The Gemara in Bab Mitziah on Daf Nun Tes says, La'olam yizar adam be'onoas ishto. Be very careful not to hurt your wife's feelings. Because as a result of her delicate nature, her tears are very close. And when a wife starts crying about her husband, that could bring a bad punishment on him. So, o ishto, and that's generally, by the way, most onoas dvarim, I would say, takes place within the family. Between husbands and wives, between siblings, parents, children, that sort of thing. So the first thing the Torah says is you have to be careful. Now I want to just tell you what the halachic range over here is. Number one, the Mishnah in Baba Metzia says you are not allowed to tell a Baal Tshuva Zechor Ma'asecha Harishonim. You're not allowed to tell a Baal Tshuva. Remember what you said. Sometimes you may get this where the Baal Tshuva tries to correct, says to somebody in shul, maybe you guys could stop talking. And say to Baal Tshuva, why don't you pull the pork out from between your teeth, right, before you tell us what to do? That is 100% onoas dvarim, number one. Number two, if a Baal Tshuva doesn't want people to know he's a Baal Tshuva, you're not allowed to tell people. I don't know why Baal Tshuva wouldn't want people to know. Sometimes Baal Tshuva just say, you should be proud of it. Baal Tshuva should be proud of what he's done, not. But sometimes people don't want people to know. That's his prerogative. I know a guy who to this day, and a very close friend of mine, to this day, he was in Kollel, as you're talking about going back probably about 40 years ago. He was in Kollel. I told you guys this once. He was in Kollel, and there was a Baal Tshuva learning in his Kollel for a while. He'd been in Kollel for a couple of years. And they were getting ready for the new Zman. So this guy, this is almost like the case in the Gemara, the do-gooder, right, who covers over the grade with the thing, and he's doing somebody a favor. Before the next Zman, he decided to arrange a chavrusa for this guy, Ruvain, the Baal Tshuva. He wanted to arrange a chavrusa for him. So he went over to one of the other Kollel guys, and he said, by the way, next man, do you mind learning with Ruvain? He's very good in learning. He's a Baal Tshuva, but he's excellent at learning. And Ruvain comes over to him. The guy told me his story himself. Ruvain comes over and he says, you know what, I've been in this Kollel for 2 years. Nobody knew it was a Baal Tshuva. I didn't want anybody to know, and because of what you did, I'm leaving the Kollel. And he left the Kollel. This guy, to this day, the guy regrets it. So what can I do? I didn't know. He mentioned that the guy's a Baal Tshuva. So if somebody doesn't want to tell somebody he's a Baal Tshuva, you're not allowed to do. Number one. Number two, to mention that somebody's a convert is usher. To tell somebody he's to convert, to torment a convert verbally, to say to, well, listen, your ancestors did this, that, and the other, that is usher. These are specifically mentioned. Two, to make a nickname for somebody. And when it comes to nicknames, you can lose your olam haba. If you use a derogatory nickname on somebody, you lose you're tampering with their olam haba. And it says, even if he's gotten used to the nickname, even if he's gotten used to it, and you call him, he doesn't mind anymore. People call him his nickname all the time. But you're calling him the nickname with intent because you're insulting him, that you're not allowed to do. Mechana shem lechavero, to go and give somebody a nickname. If it's an innocuous nickname, if it's something like his name is Goldman and everybody calls him Goldie, right? So that you're allowed to do unless he says specifically, don't call me that. And if he says specifically, it's an isser. And if you're embarrassed by it, you're tampering with your olam haba. And you're not allowed to cause people worry, causing people worry. I know, so Jews somehow, especially at Shalosh Shudas, this takes place. Right? At Shalosh Shudas, everybody sits around the table, the lights go down, and then everybody here talks about all the nerve-wracking stories they've heard that week. Right at Shalosh. And then everybody, you're not allowed to do any of that. To cause people worry, you're not allowed to do. All of this is an Isser Deoraisa. Now, there's one particular form of what do you call it? There's one particular form of onaz dvarim, which is also not well known. You're not allowed to go into a store and ask prices if you have no intent to buy. Right? Now, again, I don't know. Nowadays, I don't think anybody ever people don't go into stores because everybody buys on Amazon, number one. And number two, you check prices on a thing. But let's say you're curious. You go into a shop. And you're curious because you want to know what the prices are. It's like a mom and pop shop. You go in and you start asking prices. You have zero intent to buy. That you're not allowed to do, because when you go into a shop and you start asking prices, so you're getting his hopes up that he's going to make a sale. And by getting his hopes up and then disappointing him, that's a form of an oz of dvarim.
I'm guessing if you tell him that you're not interested in buying.
Then if he wants to, then if you say to the guy, listen, I'm not interested in buying, I'm just curious. And the guy says, he'll do either one of the things. He'll either say, get out of here, I'll call my Doberman. Or he'll say, yeah, sure. And he'll tell you, because sometimes the shop owner may feel, yeah, but maybe you will buy. So if you tell him in advance, that's perfectly acceptable. Or if you're shopping around, that you can do. You can go in, sometimes if you're Jewish, if you bought a pair of shoes for, you bought a pair of shoes for $80, and on your way home you see the same shoes in another store, another shop, and you're Jewish, so you're not going to be able to walk past without finding out how much they cost, because this is either going to make or break your day. Because if in the other store they're $90, then yeah, right? And if in the other store they're $70, then you're not going to be able to eat dinner when you get home, right? And what you're not allowed to do is you're certainly not allowed to then go back to the first shop and return the shoes, unless you say to him, I'm giving back the shoes. I'd like to return the shoes because I saw them cheaper somewhere else. You could tell them. And then the guy said, listen, I don't have any obligation to take back those shoes. I don't have any obligation to take back those shoes. And then you're not allowed, let's put it this way, gentlemen, and again, it's such you see people who are so frum in every other area. They won't drink Chalav Yisrael. They won't drink a regular. They're makpid on Chalav Yisrael. They'll only eat glot meat. But for $5, they'll perpetrate a deception. You come back and say, "Oh, listen, I put on the shoes. They were really uncomfortable. I want my money back." Then you run over to the other. You make up a story. You can't make up a story. Then you're a liar and you're a thief and you're doing everything else, all for $5. So you'll have to live with it. And to go into the other shop where you have no intent to buy, and you say to the guy, listen, oh, by the way, how much are those shoes? You're not, that's an Isser Deoraisa. If you say to the guy, listen, I just bought these shoes for $80. I'm curious, how much are you selling those shoes for? That you could do. If you got guts, you could do that. Or you could go back, that you could do. You could shop around, you could price around, you could ask prices if there's a chance you're going to buy. If it's the right price, I'll buy it. We can turn off the air. I think we can turn off the air for a few minutes. If it's the right price, I'll buy it. That you're allowed to do. But to just go in, and I've said, people do that. People do that all the time. Then there's one thing even worse. This is probably the most cruel thing of all, is where somebody buys something. Men do this all the time. A guy buys a new car. Now, how much was it? $24,000. My brother-in-law could have gotten you for $21,500, right? Somehow brother-in-laws are always involved, by the way. Brothers and brothers-in-law are always involved in anything automotive. Tires, cars, always a brother or a brother. True or not true? Diamonds, always an uncle. Right? Right? And the uncle's name is either Al or Irv. Right? That's true or not true. Right? Or Marv. Sometimes Yesh Omri Marv. Right? Those are the guys who are involved. Diamonds, I guess it's a generational thing. The younger generation is in automotives, then you graduate up to diamonds. Always, I got my wife's diamond ring. My uncle. Right? My, electronics was a great uncle. My cars, only brother. My son and my brother. My son and my son-in-law, that's all they ever talk about is cars. Cars, tires, wheels, right? Used, leased, that's all, right? Uncles, diamonds. That's the way it works. So at the end of the day, to go and tell somebody you could have gotten it cheaper is one of the cruelest things you can do to people. Right. People do this all the time. Oh, I could have gotten it. By women, it's always shoes. Men, it's tires. Women, it's shoes. I don't know why that is. How much did you pay? Oh, they had a sale over there. What are you telling her for now? I think that a woman will never wear. That's why women always have lots of pairs of shoes in their closet that they never wear. Those are just shoes that somebody told them they could have bought cheaper. That's right. And what's her name? Imelda Marcos. What was her name? From the Philippines. She had 1,200 pairs of shoes. She and her husband had ripped off the entire country. Eventually, they killed them both. But they went and she had about 1,200 pairs of shoes. That is a form of an ostvarm. Okay, all these things. The bottom line is that anything that you that the person walking away from you. I always tell people, if you have a conversation with somebody, did the person walk away happier or less happy that they spoke to you? If they're less happy when they walked away, that means you were probably over an Isser D'Oraisa of an ostvarm. And between husbands and wives, it's particularly, it's particularly delicate, and that's why it's alluded to with Ishto. And Rava says, it's Rava in the Gemara says, be careful that you honor your wives. Don't be careful with their, do not. Rava says, honor your wives in order that you get rich. Be mechabed your wife so that you get rich. It doesn't mean that everybody's not rich. It means that they're torturing their wives. It just means mechabed your wife. Mechabed your wife, so be willing to spend money on her and treat her and put her on a pedestal. Yes, somebody had a question. Yeah.
I was going to ask, does this only apply retroactively? Meaning, like, in the future, do I have to think, like, oh, could this make him feel bad eventually?
It would be a good thing, yeah. It would be a good thing to make sure that when in doubt, you know the old saying, when in doubt, shut your mouth, right? That's a good rule of thumb to follow in life. Don't say if it's going to make somebody feel bad. Don't say it. Don't say it. We have a policy in the house. I do not come into the house. If we find out that something bad happened, a tragedy, we don't bring in the news unless it's something somebody in the house needs to know. Somebody was nifter. They have to go visit Shiva, so I have to tell my wife about it. But if I find out somebody was nifter, what do I got to tell her? If she finds out, she finds out. Doesn't find out, also good. I have to make somebody feel bad or cause somebody that they should feel good. What's the point of telling them? Okay. Take a look. We can turn on the air again, I think. Take a look at Perek Chav Hei Pasuk Yud Ches. Okay, now we go back to Shemitah. So in Yud it says like this. First of all, this, by the way, this the reason this follows business. The reason this Isser, the proficient say, the reason that the Torah talks about Onas Dvarim right after it talks about how to behave in business is because often business brings out the negative in people. Right? People can get very nasty in business. And the fact that you're sitting at the table and trying to cut a business deal doesn't allow you to unleash your mouth. So in Pasuk Chitches says, "Vasisam es chukosai v'zershvatai tishbru vasisam osam, v'yashavtem ala oretz levetach." You will dwell on the land in security. You'll live in Eretz Yisrael in security. And v'nosna ha'oretz pirya v'achaltem lesova v'yashavtem levetach aleh. And again, the Torah says you will dwell in security. So unfortunately, say you keep Shemitah, you're going to have bumper crops. And when you have bumper crops, there's always the concern that the people around you will invade because they want to get at your crops as well. The Torah says you have nothing to worry about. If you keep Shemitah properly and you have bumper crops, you will dwell on the land. You will dwell on the land in security. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that the punishment for not keeping Shemitah, the Mishnah says there are four things, right? That why do we get punished with galus? Why do we get punished with exile? So, what do you think the first three are?
Because we're abusing the land that was given to us.
Idol worship, immorality, and murder. Okay, that we understand. And not keeping Shemitah properly. Right? Those are the four things the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that you go to Golos for. Why do you go to Golos for Shemitah? Why do you go to Golos for not keeping?
Your parnasa, right?
What's that?
You think you're making your parnasa, not Hashem.
Very close. Very close.
You're abusing the gift of Eretz Yisrael.
You're abusing the gift of Eretz Yisrael. In other words, the fact that we survive in Eretz Yisrael is lamala min hateva. Right? The fact that we live in Eretz Yisrael is beyond nature. We're surrounded by 60 or 80 million sworn enemies. And the fact that the Jewish people are here and live in Eretz Yisrael without being overrun by the others, that in itself is beyond nature. The existence of Klal Yisrael, the survivor of Klal Yisrael, is lamala min hateva. You don't want to live in Eretz Yisrael lamala min hateva, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings it down to the natural running of the world. The natural running of the world is that we don't exist. The natural running of the world is we're put in exile. That's the natural running of the world. If people ask, where was God during the Holocaust? The profound question. Where was God during the Holocaust? God was exactly where German Jewry put him. They put him out of the picture. So if you have the lamb is surrounded by 70 wolves. That's Chazal's example of Klal Yisrael. We're the sheep surrounded by 70 wolves. Well, by natural law, what happens when a sheep is surrounded by 70 wolves? It's a bad day for the sheep. If it's very bad to be the sheep surrounded by 70 wolves. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu supervises beyond nature, then the sheep survives. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't supervise, he steps out of the picture, the shepherd is out of the picture, so you're leaving it to natural law. By natural law, they get ripped apart. So if you come along and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you step out of the picture, I go, are you sure? You really want me to step away? Are you sure about that? You don't want me to be involved in your life? You don't want to serve me and me to be involved? Okay, I'll step away, but okay, here we go. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu steps out. So what happens? It's not it's not where was God during the Holocaust? How could a Holocaust happen? That's the wrong question. The question is, why didn't it happen more often? There should always be Holocaust. And we shouldn't even be here to be talking about it. And the only reason we are is because there's so you push HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you're living in Eretz Yisrael. None of it makes any sense. Listen, in Israel, they always used to say, do you know what the currency is called in Israel, by the way? What's it called?
Israeli shekel.
The what?
New Israeli
The new Israeli shekel. Now make a diuk.
There was an old
Right, there was an old Israeli shekel. It's like they used to say, oh, why does the Polish Navy have, the new Polish Navy has glass bottom boats? Why? To see the old Polish Navy. Okay, so in Israel, they, what do you call it? In Israel, they have the new Israeli shekel, the shekel chadash. That's why it's shin ches, the shekel chadash. Well, what can you, make the diuk? There used to be a shekel yashan. Now, Israel had runaway inflation. And at one point, the shekel got to 1,000. There was 1,000 on this. Was a note of 1,000. The one show. So how did they fix it up? They scooped 3 zeros off of it and just printed a new one that says the new shekel. That's how they fix it up. Now ask any economist if that works. Every economist in the world will tell you that does not work. Here we are. Shekel's one of the strongest currencies in the world right now, right? It doesn't work. That's you're bankrupting your country, right? I was once in a cab years ago, and so the cab driver, there was some crisis in the country, security, finances, whatever it was. I would probably go back. So the cab driver says, he's talking, he drives this, Tagili, ma yeh ba'od 20 shana. What's going to be here in another 20 years? Because everything was a mess. What's going to be here in another 20 years? So I started laughing. She said to me, why are you laughing? So I said, because 20 years ago they were asking that question also. They said, "Ma yeh ba'od," and here we are. We're still here. Last one out, close the door, lock the door. That's what happens if you knock off 3 zeros. But the shekel is perfectly strong. Because it doesn't work al pi teva here. Israel does not work by natural law. The rain in Israel doesn't work by natural law. That's why we got to daven for rain. We're dependent on God's rain. We're not like Egypt. We're not like other countries, Italy, where the bracha from Yitzchak to Esav is you're going to live on a fertile land. It's not like England where it's raining all the time. And somehow they still manage to have a water shortage there. Go figure that one out. You know that? Do you know that in England they have a water shortage? That's a great question. Somebody didn't do their homework. And in Israel, where you're living, in Israel you got the desert starts growing because they managed to figure out Israel exports agricultural education. Israel is they consulted by other countries on how to get plants to grow and crops to grow and everything else. And high tech and everything else. It's not natural law. You want to live on natural law, then you leave. Shemitah is not natural law. Now look at Pasuk Chav. Look at the next Pasuk. Vichi Pasuk Chav. This is the biggest question. This is a question almost all the Mefarshim. Many Mefarshim ask this. Vichi Somru Manocha Bashona Ashis. When you say, what are we going to eat in the 7th year? Hein lo nizrav lo nosov etzoreh. We're not going to plant. We're not going to gather our crop. What are we going to eat in the 7th year? Vitzivisi es birchasi lachem bashona ashis. You'll have bracha in the 6th year. Ve'oses es atvul l'shol shab. You're going to have crops. The 6th year will produce 3-year crops. 3 year worth of crops. So when you say, what are we going to eat in the 7th year? The 6th year, you're going to have a bumper crop. It's going to cover the 6th year. It's going to cover the 7th year, the 8th year, and part of the 9th year, so that you have enough. Okay. So first you say, "But I understand," and it's only if we say it. When you ask, "What are we going to eat?" Then I'm going to have a bumper crop. And if you wouldn't have asked, then what would be? So you only get the bumper crop because you asked, "What are we going to eat?" And that's what the words say. So the Sforno and other Mefarshim say, "Good question, right?" What's the answer? What's the answer, gentlemen? Hashem wants us to call him. That's true. That's true. So the Sforno says not quite like that. This is a downgrade. Level 1 is do it and don't ask questions. And what would be? Then we wouldn't have that bumper crop. When you have a bumper crop, it's a great thing. But bumper crop means bumper work. It's a lot of work, a lot of harvesting, a lot of planting. There's a higher level and a better bracha, which is you have less, but you need to eat less. You don't need as much. Yisborech, the example of the Gemara, the terminology of the Gemara is Yisborech b'meyav. The food that you eat will be blessed in your stomach. So you don't even need to do the work. You'll have what the little bit that you have or whatever you're given will be adequate. It'll be sufficient. Your faith is not at that level. You don't have that level of v'chisomru. When you start saying, but what are we going to eat? What are we going to do? Oh, okay. So then we'll move into a little more natural. I'll fill your fields, and you'll have to harvest, and you have good. You have bumper cropping, but it's going to be more sweat on your part, because that's a level down. That's a step down. Moshe Feinstein says based on this, that number one, our attitude is supposed to be, don't ask any questions. A Torah Jew doesn't do it because we're told to do it. The next level down is that you start asking questions. Rabbi said, where do we see this nowadays? Where do you see this now? Rabbi Feinstein says, it's not me saying it. Rabbi Feinstein says that. He says, you see plenty of people who don't work much. And they've got enough. You got plenty. You got guys living in Koilel who still then, if you ask the individual, well, how are you making it? I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure. Somehow, I get from the kollel, and my wife works a little bit, and somehow, all of a sudden I got a check from my uncle, and I go to, things work. You have other people who say, I'm not quite sure, but even though they're getting supported by, yeah, sure, I'm not quite sure. We live on faith. Yeah, you live on faith and your father-in-law's paycheck. Yeah, okay, that's a different level of faith, right? But there are people who don't have that safety net. They're making it. There are plenty of people you make it. You work. That's a bracha. If you're starting to, you don't have that faith, okay, so you may make more money, but you're going to work harder. So you work 12 hours a day. 12 hours a day. And my Zaydi used to say, it's no trick to get rich by working. The trick is to get rich without having to work. That's the trick. So at the end of the day, the Torah says this is a downgrade. V'chisomru is a downgrade. We're not supposed to be at. You ask, okay, but you're willing to keep Shemitah, and you ask the question, okay, so then you'll have the crop for the next 3 years. Okay.